Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. In a major diplomatic breakthrough, the government of India announced that India and China have reached an agreement to resume patrolling at the remaining friction points along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh, where tensions had persisted since the Galwan Valley clash of 2020. Now, there was a press briefing which was done by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri yesterday, where he said that this agreement marks a significant step towards disengagement, particularly in the remaining friction points, indicating that sensitive areas of Depsang Plains and Demchok. Now, the big question we are asking on today's show that is this a major diplomatic breakthrough? And should India still be cautious of China's motives? Joining me now is Col Rohit Chaudhary, who's the chairman of the ex-servicemen department from the Congress. Thank you so much, sir, for joining. We have Dakshina Murthy, who's the managing editor of the Federal. Thank you so much, Dakshin, for joining. And we have Sanjay Kapoor, who's the international affairs expert and writes a lot on India-China affairs. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for joining. And I'll begin with Colonel Chaudhary. You've been in the armed forces earlier, and now that these are the claims which are made by the Indian government saying that this is a major diplomatic breakthrough. So do you also see this as a major diplomatic breakthrough, or you see this just as a ground, uh, uh, you know, a ground which is being prepared before the meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi?
The press briefing does not state a lot of things. As a military man, I can understand that they are hiding a lot of things, and we cannot divulge every information on the media also. But at the same time, I would rather go with a caution that we have they have said that we go back to the 2020 positions. But I would like to state that this entire region, we've had almost 10 kilometers of demilitarized zone. And while we were serving, so we have patrolled all through the line of control as well as the international borders with the China. So the issue remains that those 10-kilometer buffer zone, you can call it, or demilitarized zone, you call it. So in lot of areas, we have lost the control of patrolling. So that area was purely demarked for carrying out patrolling. There was no construction allowed, there was no bunkers allowed, there was nothing, and nobody could take weapons in that area. Now in this Depsang region, Depsang Plains and Demchok area, as you would have seen the Galwan clashes also. Not a it was not a weapon related clashes. It was a physical hand to hand assault and the battle. So we have to be very careful. Firstly, that what was lost and what has been gained. So it is just as on today, it is just a statement. We
Okay.
have to
No,
get
but
into
since
more
you were saying,
details.
just allow me to interrupt you, Colonel Chaudhary. You said that this is just a statement, so which means that according to you, it's not a diplomatic breakthrough. And since we also don't know the terms of conditions, so you wouldn't call it as a very significant step.
It is not a significant step. See, the thing is that we've had almost 24, you know, defense commander level interactions, but there is no breakthrough. It is our right to patrol in the entire stretch of 10 kilometers, and whether we have regained that or not. It is not a military matter. It is a diplomatic matter. Had it been a military matter, military people would have sorted out in the the way they would have wanted it to be done. But unfortunately, it's a diplomatic battle, and what was lost is known to the entire country. What has been gained is yet to be known to the country. So we need to be we need to wait and watch what has been allowed It is not that we need any permission. It was our right. We lost the right, and that lost battle, how much we have regained the, our area and our rights, because we have lost a lot of areas. Not only this region, we have lost in the Pangong Lake region, Demchok, Five Finger, Three Finger, Two Finger. A lot of patrolling points are there. Out
Hmm.
of 65 patrolling points, are we allowed to enter into 5, 10, 20 is yet to be known.
Right.
Along with that, it's a larger issue with the Chinese border, because there is a definite incursion of uh, Chinese forces. They have constructed bunkers, they have constructed settlements, and even in Arunachal also, they have entered and they have made settlements.
Hmm.
So there are a lot of things to be taught. As on date, I would like to wait and watch. It is just a statement. It's a face saving to, because the entire nation would be watching that Prime Minister Modi is going to BRICS for the BRICS Sammelan and summit. So the entire nation would be asking, "What have you done? Why have
Hmm.
you gone? What have you achieved?" So Jinping would be there, Chinese premier would be there. So why are you going there? So there would be a lot of questions, and we are going, as you know, that we are going through the election time. So they don't want to. They don't
Right.
want to actually they don't want to create another front or open another front in various election campaigns, because
Right.
this question would be asked. So
Hmm.
just to suppress this question asking, they have come out with a statement, and I do not believe, trust, until or unless we physically go and occupy.
Okay. I'll come to you, Sanjay, now that what Colonel Chaudhary just pointed out, that it isn't a very big diplomatic breakthrough as it is being made out by the Indian side. Now, the big question is that if it is a breakthrough and if we call it a disengagement process, then there are three things which are required to end the standoff. And the first one is, of course, is the disengagement. Second is the de-escalation, and the third one is the de-induction of the rival forces. Now, only the first step has started. The other two things we do not know whether at all it will take place or not, given the fact that China has already built so much of warfare inside our territory. But the big question is that when Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping meet up, will they talk about these land grabs which China has indulged in? Will he say things clearly to China?
Thank you for inviting me, Neelu, for this important discussion. Thank you, Colonel Chaudhary, for your views,
Thank
and
you.
always good to see Dakshin here.
Thank you.
Uh, I think this matter is far more complicated than what is made out to be. It is good to thump your chest that we've been able to convince the Chinese to withdraw and come back, show it as a diplomatic breakthrough. I want to ask a few questions. These are very commonsensical. I am not a military expert and nor desire to be one. Why is India claiming that the change has taken place? Why is India claiming all the things that ideally both the parties should have done that? I learn only now that the Chinese also endorse the fact there's been some kind of a breakthrough or there's some kind of things happen. But bulk of it came from here. The first Foreign Secretary Misri said, then subsequently yesterday in the summit in Taj Palace Hotel, Foreign Minister Jay Shankar floated in and he said that there is merit in what the Foreign Secretary is saying, something to that effect. But the truth is that there is far more riding on this. It seems that India is very keen to have a bilateral with Xi Jinping, the Prime Minister Modi, and there has been no commitment whatsoever till now whether there will be a bilateral between the two leaders or not. So, was it some kind of condition that the Chinese were expected that be fulfilled before the two leaders meet? Because all the so-called noise about the deal coming through, everything happened from when there were 24, 25 rounds of talks earlier. Why didn't it happen earlier? Why is it happening now? What has changed now? what are the circumstances, how has it changed? So these are some of the issues that really color the entire conversation which is happening around that. Then there is other thing that I hear from the other side is some noises that are also coming from China. They are saying that Chinese made it amply clear that till the time you sort out the border issue, whichever way it is happening in our favor or whatever, we will not restore many of the so-called trade-related issues with India. And India does a lot of trade, even though that we have made a lot of restrictions on Chinese goods to come here. Our our import of bulk drugs from China is stupendous. I mean, if Chinese to put the screws on us, we would be starved of some key medicines, that are required, like the antibiotics. Bulk of it comes from China, and we don't make it here. And it's been like this for the last many years. Similarly, all the solar energies, solar cells, solar panels, they come from China. Then you have many other related issues. We don't have a direct flight between India and China, and that is causing a great amount of fall. In the last economic survey that was presented in the parliament, the chief economic advisor made it amply clear that if India wants to go higher on the GDP growth, they should consider having a tie-up with China, get funding from China. So there was an exploration of that kind, which has not been in a certain way followed up, but it came as some kind of surprise to defense analysts that what is India talking about. Then I learned again from the other side that the Chinese have made it mandatory that if you want to have good relations with China, it should be all or nothing. So either you get the TikTok back in and you get all the other things back in, do away with all the restrictions that have been put in the apps which we try to use to punish the Chinese, and only then it'll be acceptable. So we have to see what comes out of it tomorrow when there is a bilateral between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. Would that be announced that there'll be restoration of some of these things or not? So it has to be seen. It is what we are seeing is just the first stage of the breakthrough or the change that has happened between India and China. And secondly, the bigger issue is how will the US perceive this? How will the West perceive this? They have been very kind to the fact that India China should not have good relations. In fact, bulk of the material about the Chinese occupation and everything comes from American satellites. So they are the ones who have been feeding quite a bit of stuff about the India China and how it can really spin out of control. And they have a vested interest in ensuring that China doesn't attack Taiwan. And they think that by India beefing up its borders here, they would be able to ensure that China is sandwiched from both sides. But these are some of the calculations. So there are, as I said, many layers to the whole thing. Let's see what happens. We've seen the first bit only.
Okay, you're saying that this is just a very small step which has made a beginning. But Dakshin, coming to you, that what does this patrolling arrangement now mean? People are talking about a status quo ante, that we return back to the position of 2020. Now, what does it mean? I mean, how does a common man perceive these complexities? Does it mean that we are going back to our position of 2020 before this Galwan clash happened? And a lot of territory has already been occupied by China. So, does it mean that there is already a backroom talk between India and China that apparently China will withdraw? Will it be so easy for China to do it? So, all these are very important questions. So, what does this new patrolling arrangement really means? As what Colonel Chaudhary also said, that this was our right, and now we are calling it a big breakthrough.
Um, the patrolling points are, basically, if you look at the India-China border, there is no border fundamentally. So then how do you say what is your territory and how do the Chinese say something is their territory? So you say that because these are the places where the Chinese patrol and and there are areas where the Indians patrol. So it's notionally considered that areas where the Indians patrol is their territory and where the Chinese patrol is the Chinese territory. So at the back end, what we have also kind of forgotten is that there is a border dispute mechanism. There is a kind of an attempt to resolve this border dispute that's been going on for many years. It hasn't worked. But point here is that so the Chinese have a certain patrolling points, and India also has certain patrolling points. So so this was the kind of a understanding that existed between the two countries. Now, what the Chinese have done over a period of time in reality, especially post 1962, and the war, is that they have moved ahead. If you look at the Chinese map, they have moved much closer to India. So what the Chinese typically do is they move 2 steps, and then if there is a lot of discussion and all that, they move 1 step back. So they have gained 1 step. So this is what they have done historically, and by doing this constantly, they have reached the northern end of the Pangong Tso or the Pangong Lake. So, and that is much below Aksai Chin. If you look at the map, the Aksai Chin, was at one point of time. So the point here is this entire border region. In fact, before the 1962 war, the Aksai Chin area was patrolled by both India and China. China was patrolling and India was patrolling, and then from there we have reached the point where we have come much closer to India. So what it effectively means is that in all these years, China has slowly moved in, and what they do is each time they move closer, they build settlements, they build security infrastructure, etc., so that their claim at some point of time in the future becomes stronger. And India is constantly on the defensive. Okay, so this is the broad, background. Okay, so now what happened in 2020? So you have the issue that we are now discussing is from patrolling points 9 to 17A. 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, like that. So there are points till 17A. Now, the one, say Galwan, okay, was I think 14 or something. So there it was, it erupted, this whole thing erupted because there was a kind of a clash. The Chinese tried to take over the patrolling points India already had, and India resisted it. And there was there was a fisticuffs or physical clash, because as per the understanding between India and China, we are not supposed to use weapons against each other. So that was one way by which there was an attempt to prevent any armed conflict. So, but in Galwan, people died. 20 Indian soldiers died, and about, I think, 4 Chinese officers died. I mean, all these things. So Galwan became a big issue. Now, post that, the Chinese, so the tensions increased to a large, to some kind of an intensity. Post that, China has moved progressively closer. If you look at the Pangong Tso Lake, above that you have that, the fingers, the so-called fingers, 8 fingers. India has lost control over some of the fingers, and that has become a buffer zone now, which India was actually patrolling earlier. Just to give an example. So, and then, of course, India resisted when China tried to take over the Kailash mountains and push back China. But the point here is, so there was a constant tension. So, if you look at all this, and then if you take Demchok and Depsang, why are they so crucial? Is because they are extremely close to the strike junction between India, Pakistan, and China. So it becomes very, very crucial strategically. China can, keep an eye on India, block India in case of a necessity and all that. So Depsang and Demchok are really the real tangles. The Gogra Hot Springs, Galwan Valley, Pangong. So all of them have already been disengaged, and there is a kind of it's kind of resolved in some sense, but with India losing territory there, right? But then there is peace there. But then now yesterday's announcement is probably more centered on Depsang and Demchok, though the details have not yet been revealed. It's mostly about that. And then when we say that patrolling is going to come, what has happened so far is since the standoff, there has been no patrolling, right? So now India will allow the Chinese to patrol on whatever they claim is their side, and China will allow India to patrol. That's it. Broadly, this is what it is.
All right. So, Col Chaudhary, coming back to you, that in the context of all these things which we have discussed so far, would you call this move as something which is very hollow, which almost looks like a facade, given the fact that China has already crept into so much of Indian territory? What does this really, one thing, maybe as far as the claims on Depsang and Demchok are concerned, or would it really mean anything unless China really assures India that, okay, whatever land grabs have happened, we'll withdraw or we'll move away, and that seems to be really difficult.
Right, as the other panelists they have said. So there are trade issues, there are multiple issues, military issues, and especially this particular Demchok region is very important to us. Goldie Airbag, that airstrip is also there, very close to that. So we have landed C-130 aircrafts there. So we have been, continuously keeping our presence. But the major issue is, as it has also been brought out, that there was no border between India and China. So that is why the arrangement was, because we used to say that the border lies, say, 7 kilometers from our post, whereas they used to say that, no, from their post it is 8 kilometers this side. So that is why the very very simple arrangement was worked out, that that 10 kilometer uh, all along the line of actual control, there is a buffer zone or demilitarized zone where they cannot occupy any place, or we cannot occupy any place. So, but we were allowed. We have seen number of times there have been incursions. We have seen that Chinese have been coming and blocking themselves inside those areas. We used to go and throw them out, and when we used to make noise, so they used to move out. So it had been happening, between the two militaries, and it's been not a very big deal. But what has happened over last 4 or 5 years, or maybe 7 to 8 years, that we have increasingly lost the territory. Land grabbing has taken place. Our area within the buffer zone has got depleted. So that is the major issue. And Chinese are very, you know, strategically they want to, secure, because this area is very important, because the CPAC corridor is starting from that area. CPAC is crossing that area. And these areas are overlooking. These areas are overlooking those CPAC corridor. So that is why it is important for them also. It is important for us also. So that is the major crux. Now coming on to whether it is just a statement or they have achieved some big goal, I am very sure that we have not achieved anything. It is basically a face saving that we are going and going to the BRICS summit. It was a narrative where the foreign secretary first comes out and makes a statement somewhere, and then the external affairs minister makes another statement. So it's a corroborative statement and a narrative which has been run by the Modi government to do a face saving, to go to the BRICS summit, and before they meet up each other, the issues will again, whether they are discussed or not discussed, because the Chinese stand is very clear. They are putting pressure on borders to ease out their trade issues with India, because India has blocked their certain applications, there are certain things, certain actions were taken after the Galwan incident. So they just want to ease out those pressures. But in the bargain, we have not achieved anything so far. It is a hollow statement until or unless physically our military goes and corroborates, and physical local intelligence, or they gather local intelligence from the local people, those who have been going there for
No, but don't you
grazing
think
of.
that this demand could have been made already by the military commanders, that we need to go and physically check ourselves? And maybe that has not been publicized so much because a lot of things happen behind the curtains too. So maybe this
True.
kind of conversation has taken place.
True, it is important. That is why I say that today it is just a statement, a face saving for the Modi government and Prime Minister Modi to go and attend the summit, and also to meet Chinese premier. But it is a lot of we have to wait and watch, because whatever is told by this government, this government has lost its credibility in terms of truthfulness, what they speak. Probably it has to be corroborated. We do not raise questions on defense forces. They do their job. Right in the beginning, I said that it is not a, it is certainly a military issue. It is a border issue, but it is more of a diplomatic issue. So the diplomacy has to come up. Military commanders have to, follow the given directions that we don't lose our land, and for that they would use whatever means are available to them. They are holding on to, military is holding on to these things. We truthfully maintained our demilitarized zone and valued it as military commanders, but Chinese are Chinese. They go and they have, expansionism attitude, which is seen
Right.
in their actions. And lastly, I would like to say that this government, earlier there used to be mapping policy, right? So in terms that old mapping policy, in that military commanders were there, always there, and Survey of India is the custodian of all the maps. Now these in 2022, new geospatial policy has been promulgated by the Modi government, which has removed the element of defense forces being deployed or being employed in the survey of India. They were the people, those who were supposed to make and map each and every nook and corner, even the stones, trees, big rocks, mandirs, any kind of small to big landmarks. So that who will do it? So now, in case of disputes, we have no such mechanism. Earlier, defense forces used to bank on
Right.
this old mapping policy. Now this new geospatial policy, which is promulgated, is creating more of confusion, and we have no means with the military commanders to handle the border issues which we were handling till now. This aspect is very important, and it should also be deliberated.
All right. Now, Sanjay, in the absence of so many crucial answers which need to be given, so what would one assume, that is it just a feel-good exercise ahead of Prime Minister Modi's BRICS summit visit? Would you say that towards the end? And then I'll take the concluding comments from Dakshin. Yeah.
No, no, I don't think that's a full feel good exercise. I think Chinese are a serious people, and so are we. And I'm sure the army, which is negotiating with them for the last so many rounds, they have no time for trying to please the political bosses beyond a point. What may have happened is some discussion may have taken at the very top and subsequently translated at the level of the commanders. But what are the implications of all this? I want to know whether India would be serious about Quad, because we haven't heard very much about it.
Mhm.
If you remember, Prime Minister had gone to the US, and at Wilmington there was a discussion between the Quad members, and there was China was not mentioned, but time and again, the big elephant in the room is China and how to rein the Chinese in. But now that we are trying to cobble together an agreement and trying to do that, we have to see whether we disown Quad, because Chinese have been very wary from the very word go. Even in 2020, when you had Galwan, there was some kind of chatter that you would hear. The Chinese wanted to test out whether the Americans were actually supportive or an ally of India, whether they'll come in if there is a military skirmish with them, or they would not. They found to their own satisfaction that the Americans do not want to intervene when the India and Chinese fight. So we have to see, these are serious issues. I don't want to go deeper into it, but we have to see how this entire thing plays out, whether we continue to have similar engagement with Quad or whether it becomes diluted, because the new Prime Minister of Japan wanted to create an Asian NATO, and we kind of rubbish the idea. So these kind of things will keep coming up, because Chinese also are a very major power and they need to be reined in. It's not something that they would be allowed to go unfettered. And US is very cognizant. India is also cognizant. But we have a neighbor who controls, who the border we share about 3,500 kilometers long, and they are the ones who are always finding ways to somehow enlarge themselves. If they've done that in Southeast Asia, they do it with us. So sometimes it becomes very important for army of ours to keep the border hot so they cannot cross over. But as Dakshin said, it's untenanted. We don't even know where our border begins. LAC is like that. The very nature of LAC is like this, especially in Ladakh region. We have no clue where China begins and where China loses, ends, because many civil servants in Kashmir would say that you would have the people who live in the border areas come and complain to them that our animals that used to graze long distance earlier, they can't go because they now enter the Chinese territory, which has become far closer than what it was earlier. So it's not something that has happened now. Chinese have been sneaking in. It is a kind of incursion which has been happening endlessly. So there was merit in what India was doing, and I think there will remain a merit to keep them at check. Otherwise, they will keep pushing beyond a certain point.
Absolutely. So, Dakshin, which means that despite this little step, what Indian government is talking about as a breakthrough, India still needs to be very, very cautious about China's moves there.
Obviously, because we are talking about this border, and I mean, it's got long-term repercussions. Of course, we also cannot forget the larger context, which is that China has become a major power in the world today, and they are probably the only country. China is probably the only country that can take on the US. So they have grown to that level. India is still far behind. We still need to catch up. So you have this imbalance in power in the region, and to a large extent, what you see in the border is a reflection of that. So India needs to use its diplomacy, use its basically a commonsensical approach, and ensure that there is some kind of a civility that exists between the two countries, and that you unnecessarily don't get into a hostile situation. So if you look at it from these points of view, any kind of a agreement is good, any kind of a deal is good, because to that extent you keep away conflict and you vote for peace. So to that extent, I would still say it's good.
So we'll have to keep our eyes open on what happens at the BRICS summit and also at the bilateral meeting if it happens between Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi. We'll have to end it here and one appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion, subscribe to our channel, send us a feedback and stay tuned to the Federal.